So we took 104 Marines up to West Beirut to an area that was being used as the temporary U.S. embassy. And it included the British embassy because the U.S. embassy had been truck bombed the previous April of '84. The U.S. embassy got destroyed by a van packed with explosives. 60-some people got killed. So I was set up there with the Marines. At that time, I didn't realize at the time, but I soon found out that I actually had more Marines as a second lieutenant 5 miles away from everybody else than my company commander had. Back at the airport. So I started busting his ass. We were the same age. He was a great guy. And saying, sir, you need to send that company guy down up to me because this is really Fox company, not what you got left down at the airport.
Yeah.
So I don't think you want to hear what he said to me, but it wasn't polite. So
they have a great way of articulating that.
Yeah. So I stayed up there with my Marines, and we stayed there for about 4.5 months. And this is a really good story, at the risk of sounding self-aggrandizing, but I'm saying this as a lesson to current leaders. So Reagan pulls all the Marines offshore and says, come back on the ships, with the exception of me and my group in West Beirut. So now you've got, everybody's on the ship, and you have a second lieutenant with 104 Marines left ashore. And it's nasty. I mean, stuff's going on. When the Pentagon found out that a second lieutenant was ashore, intense pressure rolled down through the chain of command. Like, look, I'm sure he's a good lieutenant, but I mean, this is a field grade officer. Right. Do that. And my battalion commander and the MU commander had been in Vietnam together. And they literally said, look, don't know if you know this, but him and his staff sergeant and those Marines been up there alone for 3 months already. And they've handled everything. This guy's got it. And they resisted that pressure and allowed me to stay. I never knew that until about 5 or 6 years after we got back, that they had gone to bat to me and for me in fights. So the moral of the story is, I like to think I was up to the task. I had a strong staff NCO, and that my colonel and the brigadier general saw no need to put a major or a lieutenant colonel in. Nothing had changed except the Marines were now on the ships. And they said, we trusted him. He's got it. He's keeping it. And they let me stay for another month and 3/4 up there, by myself with my staff sergeant, all these Marines. And then we got replaced 1 for 1 by the follow-on.
Oh, yeah. Ripped y'all out.
Wow.
So it's all about trust.
Yeah.
It's all about trust. And I'm sure you guys have seen this. In peacetime, everybody needs an officer involved, a chief petty officer, a gunny involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
As soon as combat starts, okay, Corporal, take this patrol out. Right, Lance Corporal, you got it.
Oh, yeah.
And so, as you know, the time to start that is not in combat. It's in peacetime and whatever. Trust them.
I don't know why we do it that way. It's repetitive. I guess there's something to do. Right. I mean, I guess I wasn't in long, and I got stuck in my positional authority is center of the hourglass. Like, I can deal with the officers all the way up to the stars and then all the way down to the lowest guy. I love it.
Yeah.
I never wanted to leave it.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of practice, but there's so many gifts holding that rank. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's true. We got to go on the Truman the other day, and, the average age of people who run that aircraft carrier around 19 to 22, right? Yeah, which is
so bizarre.
If you knew that's just a floating city that's run by. I mean, the 17-year-old that has the wheel of that sucker.
Yeah.
Like, literally has the wheel.
I know. It's like, who has this job to actually drive the ship? And they're like, oh, this kid over here that's younger than our son.
Yeah,
I was like, what?
Who I wouldn't even let drive my tractor. You know what I'm talking about? And we an aircraft carrier. Yeah. That sucker doesn't turn around on a dime.
That knows you a turn.
And I mean, that's the coolest part about the military. It's just like the moms and dads, the old men in there are 40 and 50s, which they're still having a great time.
Yeah.
And the discipline and respect that rolls down to the younger ones in there, they have the responsibilities and you can't see that when you're in. I didn't know that. It can't even, it's almost like going through all those lessons over and over again. You learn something and you can't really appreciate it till you well past it.
Yeah, past it. Well, we left Beirut. I came back, and then, regular peacetime infantry stuff. Went back, went to Paris Island as an officer. And then when it was time to go back to the fleet, I went to the 8th Marines again, this time with 1-8. The unit had been hit in the
yeah. How was that linking up with those guys?
Well, they were all gone mostly, except some of the older guys had left and come back.
Yeah.
And so I made sure that, we all made sure that the history wasn't lost. And I was very touched. One of my TBS and IOC classmates got killed by a mortar round, landed right between him and his staff sergeant in August of '83. His name was George Losey, great guy. And everybody loved this guy, great guy. So I went to his funeral, was actually one of his pallbearers in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I'm going to Beirut now in a month or two. And so I remember George, obviously. Every time I stop at the Beirut Memorial in Jacksonville, North Carolina, I touch his name on the wall. Well, I go, and you know how you have these hails and farewells, when someone joins the unit, they introduce the new guys and the old guys are leaving, they give them plaques. Well, as part of the farewell, one of the lieutenants says, I've had a great time here, and it's now my job to pass on Lieutenant Losey's field jacket to another deserving lieutenant. And I realized that they had gotten George's field jacket when he got killed, preserved it, and were passing it from one lieutenant to the other in perpetuity.
Oh, wow.
To not forget it. And I was...
That's awesome.
I was speechless.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was the only one in the room that knew George Losey.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Team Never Quit podcast. So buckle up, Buttercup.